Hello everyone, my name is Manu Paremi and I'm an applications engineer at Plexim. I'd like to welcome you to this tutorial video on getting started with the C2000 target support package. Before we begin, please make sure you've installed the latest version of either PLECS standalone or PLECS block set. If you haven't installed PLECS, please visit our website for support. Keep in mind that you need licenses to both PLECS and PLECS Coder. First, go to www.plexim.com using a web browser of your choice. Once you're there, hover your mouse over the download button and select the appropriate target support package from the drop-down menu. In this case, I'm selecting the C2000 support package. For installation on Windows, using the installer executable is recommended. For other platforms, the manual installation process must be followed, as discussed later in the video. Download the installer executable and double-click on it to start the setup of the PLECS C2000 TSP. Choose the desired location to install the files and proceed with the full installation to download and install all the necessary tools to build and program a TI MCU from PLECS. Now, when you open PLECS, you should see both the RTBox and C2000 target libraries added to the PLECS library browser. The external TI tools required should be installed as well. For the manual installation of the C2000 TSP, first download the TSP zip archive. Then create a new folder at a location of your choice and rename it as Coder Targets. In this case, I've created it on my desktop. Next, extract the zip archive that you've downloaded and move the C2000 directory to the newly created Coder Targets folder. Note that all the target packages supported by the PLECS coder should be placed in the same folder. For example, to install the RTBox software, the RTBox target support package should be placed in the Coder Targets folder as well. It is recommended to also install the RTBox target support package at this point to access a wider variety of demo models. Now, open PLECS and click on PLECS Preferences under the File menu. Here, you should see the Coder tab if you've installed the PLECS license with PLECS Coder. Choose the Coder Targets folder that you've created under the Target Support Packages path. You should see C2000 under Installed Targets. If you don't see the Target Support package show up at this point, please make sure that you pointed PLECS to the parent directory of the folder named C2000. We'll come back to this warning sign here later in the video. For now, click Apply to apply the changes. You should now see the C2000 target library added to your PLECS library browser. There are two ways to deploy generated embedded code onto a C2000 microcontroller. The first is to build and program the MCU from PLECS, and the second method is to generate code into a Code Composer Studio or CCS project to then build and program from there. To deploy the MCU directly from PLECS, two standalone tools available from TI need to be installed. The first one is C2000 Code Generation Tools. The CGT includes a compiler, assembler, linker, and additional tools to build C or C++ applications for the C2000 family of MCUs. And the second tool used is UniFlash. UniFlash is a tool to program the on-chip flash memory as well as RAM of TI MCUs. If you used the installer executable in the setup process earlier, then these tools should have already been installed. To manually install these tools, First, refer to the C2000 Target Support Manual and download the recommended tool versions. Then, install both CGT and UniFlash to a location of your choice. In this case, I installed them to my desktop. Next, to configure the PLECS coder to use the external TI tools, reopen the PLECS Preferences dialog and browse to the Coder tab. Then, under the Family column of the TI C2000 target, click on the warning icon and enter the installation directories of the C2000 CGT and UniFlash tools as shown. The warning icon has now disappeared. Now, let's look at how to deploy code directly from PLECS to the C2000 microcontroller target. Once you have a model that you'd like to build onto your MCU, here I have a model to blink an LED, for example. Navigate to the PLECS Coder Options window. From the General tab, choose the desired discretization step size. Then, navigate to the Target tab. Select the target MCU. Here, I'm choosing TI-2806X since I'd like to deploy code onto a TI-28069 launchpad. Modify these parameters for the chip type, clock frequency, and step size tolerance, etc. if needed, and set the build type to build and program. There is a choice to select either run from flash or run from RAM as the build configuration. If using a launchpad or a control card as the board type, select the appropriate one from the drop-down menu. In this case, since I'm using a 28069 launchpad, I'm choosing launchpad. Then click accept and then build. The PLECS coder will automatically build the code, program the MCU, and start executing the generated code. In this case, the red LED on my 28069 launchpad is blinking. If using a custom board instead, we first need to generate a target configuration file for a specific MCU once. Target configuration files establish the basic communication settings for the MCU. To generate one, open the UniFlash application and create a new configuration based on your selected device and connection method. In this case, I'm generating a target configuration file for a 28069 launchpad. Therefore, I'm choosing C2000 as my category and selecting 28069 launchpad as my device. The connection is automatically detected as XDS100V2 probe. These connection settings can be edited if needed. Clicking on Start would generate the target configuration file for download. Download this .ccxml file to a location of your choice. Then, in the UniFlash target configuration field, select the .ccxml file that you've generated from UniFlash. Then, click on Build to build, program, and execute the generated code on the C2000 target. Note that this programming method requires that only one TI C2000 MCU can be connected to your host PC. Next, let's look at generating code to CCS and programming the MCU from CCS. Consult the C2000 Target Support Manual and download the recommended CCS version from Texas Instruments. Next, within the TI C2000 Target Support package, which you've downloaded, go to Projects and extract the template of the desired project. I'm extracting the project template for 28069 in this case. Copy the template project to a location of your choice and rename it. In this case, I'd like to rename my project as Blinky. Next, from the Project tab of your CCS window, click on Import CCS Projects and browse for your project. Select the discovered project and click on the Finish button. You will notice a new project created in your workspace. Next, find your project in the Project Explorer in CCS. Rename the project if you'd like and expand it. Double-click on the .ccxml file and select the appropriate settings. In this case, since I'm connecting to a 28069 launchpad, I'm choosing the XDS100V2 USB debug probe as my connection and 28069 as my device. Test the connection with your MCU to make sure the device is communicating. Next, right-click on the project to show Build Settings. Then, navigate to the Steps tab within the Build window. Consult the C2000 Target Support Manual for instructions on modifying the post-build steps configuration depending on your operating system. If you are using Windows operating system, it's likely that the default settings are correct. On a Mac operating system, you may need to modify the build settings. For example, in this case, I have to add the word source in front of my post-build string and change the extension of the build steps file from .bat to .sh. Leave the rest of the string as default. After modifying the build settings with respect to your operating system, apply and close the build window. Notice the folder CG in this imported project. The next step is to generate PLECS coder files into this folder. Navigate to the PLECS model that you want to build onto your MCU. For example, I here have a model to blink an LED on the TI-28069 launchpad. Then navigate to the PLECS coder options window. From the General tab, choose the desired discretization step size. Then navigate to the Target tab. Select the target MCU. Modify these parameters for the chip type, clock frequency, and step size tolerance, etc. if needed, and set the build type to generate code into CCS project. Then browse to the location of the imported CCS project and select the folder named CG. Now click Accept and then Build. Going back to the imported project on CCS, you will notice several new files created in the CG directory. These files correspond to the code generated specific to the PLECS model of interest. In this case, this code is specific to blinking an LED on my 28069 launchpad. Then proceed to Build, Debug, and run the project. Note that when generating code for a new subsystem of a different name, manually delete the contents of the CG folder, as CCS Builder will build all files in this folder, including old files. This concludes the tutorial video on setting up TI-C2000 Target Support Package. For more videos and other information, please visit our website at www.plexim.com. Thank you for watching.